The first song this evening will be number 118. Again, the opening song this evening will be number 118. I'll be leading verses 1, 2, and 4. When upon life's bill when you are in service, making all his laws, capture many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly, and you will be singing as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is overall. Count your many blessings, angels fill the tent. Help and comfort give you to the journey sent. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee to close this day. Thank thee, Father, for this day. Thank thee, Father, for all the many blessings you bestow upon us. Thank you, Father, for the beautiful sunshine that we've seen today. And just as the fall approaches, Father, we just know that you've created the heavens, you've created the earth, you've created all that we see, Father. We just we pray that we'll acknowledge each and every day, Father, how magnificent God you are, Father. We just pray we'll honor and glorify you in all we do. Pray, Father, that you'll bless all those that are unable to be here this evening or are sick. And we pray, Father, that you'll just be with them, Father, and pray that you'll bless them, Father, and lift them up, Father. And pray that they'll regain their health and come here soon, return here soon. We pray, Father, you'll bless those who've lost loved ones recently, especially Robbie and her family. And pray, Father, you'll just continue to bless them, Father, and just lift them up and pray they'll listen to you for comfort and guidance. And we pray, Father, too, you'll bless those who are undergoing treatments here for various things. We just pray, Father, you'll be with them. Pray that the meditations will work and that they will regain their strength, Father, and be able to resume a normal lifestyle. We pray, Father, that you'll bless our church. We pray you'll continue to be with us as we look for a new ministry. We pray, Father, that search will go well. We pray that you'll continue to bless Randy Lee Ann, Father, and it's been so good to be here with us, Father, here in the last few years. And we just pray you'll bless them, Father, too, as they seek a new chapter in our lives, Father, and pray to be with them. We pray, Father, that you'll bless our church, and again, Father, bless our youth. And pray, Father, that they'll look to thee for strength and guidance, and that they'll make wise decisions and godly decisions, and always try to do what's right on your side. Most of all, Father, we thank you for Jesus Christ. We thank you, Father, for his life, his death, For the hope we have through him, through his mercy and his grace, and through his name, Father, we do offer this prayer. Amen.
If you'd like to go ahead and mark the song of invitation, that'll be number 947. Again, the song of invitation this evening will be number 947. The song before the lesson this evening will be number 473. Again, the song before the lesson will be number 473. I'll be leading verses 1 and 3. There is a name above
Well, on the announcements, what I've got is ladies' Bible class is tomorrow evening at 6 in the fellowship hall. If you can come and be a part of that, I know that they have a pretty good time and learn some and eat some. And I begged last time, and I got some treats from the ladies' Bible class, so I benefited from it as well. There will be a guest speaker here this Sunday morning. P.J. Hicks will be teaching Sunday school and preaching, and the elders ask that the teenage and the college class stay in the auditorium for Sunday school. I don't see an elder here. I was going to say if he was going to speak Sunday night as well. He's not. Yeah, but I figured trying out, you'd want to try him twice while he was here. But anyway, that's what's going on. We have somebody that we just really need to recognize that's here with us. So, Aaron, use your muscle. We won't crowd your baby, but use your muscle and hold the little thing up. And I want everybody to see this little beauty queen. Oh, what? Well, I don't want to get her out. No. Look, everybody, 1, 2, 3. Oh. We're so happy for y'all. That's just absolutely wonderful. Anyway, of course, on the prayer list, Robbie, of course, and you got a call out on Lonnie Click. Lonnie, see, I don't remember all the timeline, but he fell and broke his hip, and they did surgery on it, and they realized that he has pneumonia, and he just really got went downhill. He's got one of the reasons I don't know how well many of you know Lonnie, but Lonnie used to be my size, but he's about 155 pounds now. He's got rheumatoid arthritis, and it's just keeps him racked in pain all the time. And as a result of that, he's got fibrosis in the lungs, so he's already having trouble, and he's got pneumonia. And they actually had to put a vent in yesterday. So I would say that it doesn't look good, but he actually showed some improvement yesterday. But he's really been unresponsive since Monday night. So keep him in your prayers and keep Martha. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if you know their background or anything, but he and Martha have been married for 5 years, I think, a little over 5 years. Um, they were sweethearts in school back in Missouri, and he went off to the military, and then he ended up getting married to somebody else, and she married and had 5 kids, and he married and had 3 kids, and after his wife passed away, he's been living over in Allenton now ever since the Corvette plant moved here. But after his wife passed away, he, of course, going back to see family in Missouri, and there's his high school sweetheart there, and so they reconnected and have been married ever since. But anyway, keep them in your prayers. Are there others? Delford is doing rehab, right? That's what he's in Portland for. Uh, Doing pretty good. Looks good. Did you get to see him or through the window? Yeah. Yeah. A lot of improvement. Yeah. Good. 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 Yeah. Okay. So if y'all couldn't hear, I think y'all probably could hear. Everybody hear that? Yes. Sir. Mark it. Yeah, that's kind of what happens when you come in a little bit late. But I mean, for you that wasn't late, so he is a busy man. That's true. Very busy. Yeah, but he's not going to speak Sunday night. Okay. Um, what was it? Oh, when I was sitting up here, you get to know people's voices, and when Mark started praying, I had a flashback, and I recognized the voice right away. Leanne and I were visiting my sister at the time, lived outside of Asheville, not Asheville. Is it Asheville, South Carolina? What town was it? Greenville. I knew that wasn't right. But anyway, Greenville, and we went to a little church down the road from where they lived, and the preacher he's probably 30, maybe somewhere around in there, but he was blind, and he was teaching the class, and I made a comment, and he said, "I see we have a visitor in the audience tonight." But it's pretty remarkable to watch him teach class. He would memorize the passages that they were studying, and then he said, "Now where we stopped off was about halfway through a sentence in chapter so and so," and it was pretty remarkable. Yeah, I see we have a visitor tonight. Anyway, if there's anyone that needs to take this opportunity to respond, we will sing this song of invitation, and you may do so. Yes, sorry. I forgot. I'm sorry. Yeah. Linda Linda used to attend, at least I know she did the old building, and yes. Did you say Kenny Hart or Jim Hart? A preacher? Yeah. And where's he? Where is he now? What'd she say? I'm talking about besides being in the hospital. Is he still preaching? Okay. Okay. Uh, yeah. Okay. I hadn't seen him in several years now. Yes, ma'am. Y'all must think my hearing is real good. What'd you say, Sean? Are you just in agreement or? Okay. All right. Anybody else? Yes, sir. There. Okay. Your oldest brother, Ronnie. All right. I'm sorry, Sandy. I can't hear you. Mike Newton is going to have surgery. Is that local or are they doing it back in Lexington? Okay. All right. So a lot of people remember. Anybody else? She said yes, but anyway. Well, if anybody needs to respond, you have this opportunity as we stand and sing together.
Jesus, let us come to know you. Let us see you. Face to face, such as hold us, Jesus, hold us, holy, let us live in you. Jesus, draw us ever nearer. Hold us in your loving arms. Wrap us in your gentle presence. With thee, come, bring us home.
Grandmother-in-law. All right, we are finishing up chapter 14. Well, I'm going to run through this because I've gone over it, but Revelation 14 and verse 9. And I'll tell you, I mentioned that I always have a mental block when it comes to Revelation chapter 11 and the two witnesses. Don't know why. Had it for years. Can't get it out of mind. I want to go literal. Uh, I guess 15. Yeah, chapter 15 is a difficult chapter for me, and I'll go through it, and then I'll explain why I'm kind of mixed up on it a little bit when I get there. But chapter 14 is to me it's a beautiful chapter. You got 13, you got the two big beasts rising up and basically making war on the children of God. You've got a reminder in verse 9 from another angel who says with a loud voice to the church, of course, and this didn't literally happen. This is the overall message of the book. If anyone worships the beast in its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Now, keep in mind about drinking the cup, because you're gonna run into that phrase again. Now, I'll tell you when you get to I'm jumping ahead of myself, but when we get to chapter 16, I guess what triggered that thought is here you have this cup mentioned. It's already been mentioned. It's going to be mentioned again. I've told you this. Now, it is hard to remember everything that you run across because it's so mind-boggling in the book of Revelation. But if you'll give it a little time, he'll explain himself. And that's especially true in chapter 16. But anyway, so, here's a reminder. You Christians, as tough as it is, don't worship the Roman emperor. And again, that's my take on it, that it's dealing with the Christians and emperor worship. And I'll say a little bit more about maybe how we apply that to us today as we go on. I probably will. Verse 13, used in a funeral so oftentimes for a Christian. I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. So this is a very comforting passage. This is in the day when people just work so hard. That's one reason life expectancy was probably around 35 years old. Besides all the sickness and all the warfare and all of that stuff, people just didn't live very long. But a lot of it had to do with everything, and it was so labor intensive. And the idea of resting, boy, I tell you something, that's a wonderful thought. But it's also a reminder to Christians that may be going to die because of their faith. And even when the Lord is punishing the enemy, that's always going to affect the righteous. And so some of them are going to die during what is about to be talked about in chapter 15. But you hold on to your faith, because if you die in the Lord, you're blessed and blessed indeed. And you get to rest. And oh, by the way, God doesn't forget your works. Now we oftentimes when we talk about God remembering, we focus on God remembering the negatives about us, okay? And that's okay. We need to remember that, but well, to a degree we do, because God forgets those things if he's forgiven them. But we need to remember that God is paying attention to every good deed that you do. He doesn't forget that you tried to do the right thing, or that you did the right thing. Sometimes you try and it doesn't work out, but he doesn't forget that. I think about the passage, somebody can help me. It's in Malachi chapter 3, I think. It may be in chapter 4. Chapter 4, where he talks about, and God took notice of those who spoke of the Lord and discussed the Lord among each other, and he remembered them, and they'll be his special treasures. If somebody can run across that passage for me, I didn't write it down because I didn't think of it. Huh? Would you read it if you're there, Jimmy? If you would, it's just such a special verses. Chapter 3, 16 and 17. I couldn't get in my head whether it was 4 or 3, but isn't that a beautiful thought? God is paying attention to us whenever we get together for Bible study or just talking to one another about things of the Lord. And he says, get a book. Let's write a book and write that. And he doesn't have to do that, does he? But let's make a book of remembrance and write down that these people were discussing good things. See, he remembers those things, and that's super special.
I like what verse 18 follows it up and says, then once more you shall see the distinction. Once more, and it's not, I mean, there's been plenty of evidence, but once more you shall see the distinction between the righteous and the wicked, between one who serves God and one who does not serve Him.
Yeah. God knows who belongs to him, doesn't he? Absolutely. And it's clear to him who belongs to him. It's I know that you I miss gospel meetings, and I wish we could have them and our members would attend, and we could old days gospel meetings, what we used to call revivals. Okay, I don't know. Did y'all call them revivals around here? See, we'd never call them that because that's what the Baptists call them. We call them gospel meetings, and
We want a bunch of Baptists looking up in here by accident.
but I mean, it was our terminology for getting together and having a big time preacher come in. And oh man, I tell you, I treasure those things from my childhood and when I first started preaching, when they were well attended, and we quit because I'm not trying to be a downer here, but we quit them because our own members didn't come and support them. And the interest just dropped off. But man, you could get some of those preachers and they would preach some sermons, and man, they'd hold you right up there to the judgment bar of God, and you really did some thinking. And to be honest, I need to do that I should have done more of that kind of preaching. But it was almost the idea though of, whoops, are they gonna make it or they're not gonna make it? God knows that. It's not. Whoop! I got one bad check, one too many bad checks on you. You're gone. It's not that way. But still, I do wish we. I don't know. I don't know if people in the community would respond to that kind of preaching anymore like they used to. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm reminiscing, and there's a reason for that. I read a couple of articles today that kind of got me shook up. But all right, reminisce. People were so ahead of their time. Do y'all remember the sermons written on sheets, the outlines written on sheets? We had PowerPoint before there was PowerPoint. Do y'all remember any of y'all remember those? Barbara Dyer. Well, I know Sean knows Barbara Dyer, but what's her husband's name? David Dyer used to preach over Flipping. He had, from when he started preaching, he had a trunk full of those sermon sheets, and she asked me did I want them, and I never have gone to get them, but I need those things. Kids need to see those things, and they say, well, I don't get anything out of it. Boy, it was a good help. I mean, you have verses up there, but the pictures of the judgment, whoo wee. Yes. Yeah, what are you trying to say? Anyway, Sean, that reminds me of when I first started preaching. Uh, the guy making announcements, I was standing up here with him. I just offered the invitation and I hadn't sat down. And he said, now there's a gospel meeting going on and so's preaching. And he said, now if you want to hear some good preaching, I said, George, what are you trying to say? Which he was right. I know. I mean, I hadn't been preaching 3 months, so they probably needed to hear some good preaching. Anyway, and the preacher was one of those preachers. Now I'm reminiscing, but he'd embarrass you to death, not whether he's guilty or not. There was one sermon he had. He'd pull out a pack of cigarettes and he'd say, would you walk a mile for a camel? Said some of you'd do more to get a cigarette than you would to come to church. And then he'd pull out a Playboy magazine and he had the front of it taped over. And he said, some of you have been looking at this. And then he'd pull out a bikini. And he said, some of you ladies have been prancing around in public in things like this. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If you think a bikini looks small on a person, let a preacher hold one up in the pulpit. I mean, it was, whoo. He was one of those preachers that burned the paint off the walls. The only problem with what he said, and I didn't have any problem with what he said, but he never offered an ounce of grace. It was basically you work your way to heaven, and most of us wasn't going to get there. But we used to think that was good preaching too. Anyway, let me get back to this. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and seated on the cloud, one like a son of man with a gold crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice, who sat on the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. And so you have this, really, this is a gruesome scene, this sickle cutting through the people, and then they pile the bodies up and they trample them like in a wine press, and the blood flows as high as a horse's bridle for 1,600 stadia, and that's 184 miles. Now, that's not to be taken literally, but God is bringing judgment on this empire, and I'm wanting to go. I'm getting ahead of myself too much now. I'm going to try to maintain what I want to talk about till a little bit later on. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and amazing, 7 angels with 7 plagues, which are the last, for with them the wrath of God is finished. And I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and also those who had conquered the beast and its image, and the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. And they sang the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying. Have we ever sang that song, a new song of Moses and the Lamb? Oh, I love that song. It's a difficult song. I don't know where to go on several lines, but it sure is a pretty song. Sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. That's the song of deliverance, isn't it? It's the song of deliverance. Moses delivered the people out. Jesus delivers us out of sin. And here's some of the things they said. Great and amazing. And notice, if you've got a Bible that does this, King James doesn't do this. I'm not sure the New American Standard Version does this. It sets it off in stanza form that it usually alerts you that it's a quote, or it's a poem, or it's a song. In this case, we know it's a song. Great and amazing are your deeds, O Lord God the Almighty. Just somebody put this to music so we can sing it. Just and true are your ways, O King of the nations. Who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name? And you alone, for you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. That's a pretty good song there. And after this, I looked, and the sanctuary of the tent of witnesses in heaven was open. And out of the sanctuary came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues. Notice that I told you to keep the Exodus theme in your mind, this idea of plagues. And these angels were clothed in pure bright linen with golden sashes around their chests. And one of the 4 living creatures gave to the seven angels, seven golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. And the sanctuary was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the sanctuary until the seven plagues of the seven angels were finished. Now, I said I was having a little trouble with 15. It's actually 16 that I have a little trouble with. Okay, so judgment's about to begin. I think this is a repeat. I think he's telling what has already happened. He's just coming at it from a different view. I may be totally off base on that because we've already had two groups of seven, and this is the third group of seven, and it's just different punishments on the people. And so we get a little bit of explanation about it as to why it's happening, but then we're going to get a long explanation in chapter 17. So I heard a loud voice from the temple telling the seven angels, go and pour out on the earth the seven bowls of the wrath of God. Obviously, this is figurative, right? Can you store wrath in a bowl? Again, I want to jump ahead of myself. I got to stop that. So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth. Harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshiped its image. So they're being punished for their sin. They think they're over there worshiping the statue of a Caesar, and instead of getting healthy, they get sick. Second angel poured out his bowl into the sea, and it became like the blood of a corpse, and every living thing died that was in the sea. See, that sounds so much to me like that mountain thrown in the ocean and turning the water into whatever it turned it into. It doesn't say blood, I don't think. Well, it does look like blood, I think. In chapter, whatever chapter it was, 9 maybe. Anyway, the angel poured out his bowl into the rivers and springs, and they became blood. And I heard the angel in charge of the water saying, see, that sounds so much like Exodus, right? The Nile River and all the water sources turn into blood, and even the water in their houses already in the jars. I can't help it. I got to go ahead and deal with this a little bit. From what you know about history, how did the Roman Empire end? Because I keep talking about God is bringing the Roman Empire to an end, right? I've said that many times. I think that's what it's talking about. How did the Roman Empire end, and when did it end?
I guess it's a matter of what you call when did it end.
Yeah, that's the
Because
issue.
it happened in stages.
It sure did.
It split apart, and you had two kingdoms, kind of like Israel and Judah, only on a much bigger scale.
On a much bigger scale, but yeah, that's right.
But then those two kingdoms started splitting up. Eventually, the very end, if you want to call it that, was when the Visigoths, Germans,
Yeah.
came down and invaded from the north and took over.
Been doing some reading, ain't you, buddy? Why didn't you mention the Vandals? We don't even think about the southern part of the Roman Empire down in North Africa. The Vandals took that over, took Spain. Well, then it was another group that took Spain from them. So, and I can't remember the name of them, but so outside invasions, okay, he said that. And it took a while. The ones that the book of Revelation focus on, though, is it's going to come up in this chapter, is the Parthian soldiers, we would say Iranian, coming down from the river Euphrates. They were always a threat, but then there's the German, the Visigoths, that actually came into Rome and took over, and the Pope, they had a Pope at that time, actually had to come out and basically bribe him to not destroy everything. So it happened in stages. And so, if you say, well, that just goes against everything you've said, maybe it does, but God's punishment still brings down the force that was, or the mindset that was persecuting Christianity. I decided today to look up that book of Gibbons, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, and see, he gives 5 specific reasons why it failed, and this is always ominous, but one of the reasons was they stretched their armies too thin and outside invasions. the government corruption and government waste. I mean, it's really scary when you hear this. Too many people on the dole. In other words, too many people on welfare and on government money. And all of a sudden I'm forgetting the other two. All natural disasters and calamities. And I don't remember the last one. But then I decided to look a little further, and historians say, well, it's not like the Roman Empire just collapsed and disappeared. It fizzled out more than it went out, because it did last a long time. And and the German people tried to revive it. That's why they had a ruler in World War II up until the beginning of World War One. But up right before you got to World War II, they had the Kaiser. That's Caesar. And then in Russia, that mindset of the great Roman Empire, what were their rulers called up until the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917? The czars. That's Caesar. And so they kept trying to bring it up, revive it, and they just couldn't do it, which shouldn't be surprising because God didn't want it revived. But anyway, one of the things that they said had a part to do with the Roman Empire collapsing, and this is what I was looking at this verse 4, the water turning to blood. They said they suffered from massive amounts of lead poisoning. Because what were the Romans good at, besides conquering other people? They piped water all over the place. They had engineers that would pipe water, and you look at it, and you would think the only way this water is going to flow is it's uphill. But their engineers, Leanne would have been so proud of them. They could do the math and figure out over long distances how to build arches and actually give it enough slope for water to flow. And they used pipes with lead lining. And I just read that, and this is from a secular historian. And I read that, and I thought, water turned to blood. Maybe there's something there. But most of the secular historians say Christianity destroyed Rome as one of the reasons. They still said corruption and spread too thin and all that, but they blame Christians on it. Yeah, that's right. Christianity took the military aspect a little bit out of the Roman Empire. That's right. And then there's another thing it's always worth getting is division, and that's going to come up in the next chapter. I'll give you a little bit of heads up on this. What was Herod the Great's title? We always call him this. Go ahead and say what you think. We always say King Herod, right? So what are you doing with a king when you've got a Caesar and a Senate? What the Romans did was they incorporated some local leaders that had been a king, but then they were conquered by the Roman Empire, but they would let somebody still wear that title. Now, they were a king and that they were royalty, and if the Roman government gave permission, when they died, it passed on to their children. Now, Rome sometimes said, "No, your kid's rotten. You're not going to take over as king in this area." So you have some kings. Now, in Romans 17, you're going to have 10 heads, and he says it's going to be 10 kings, and they're going to be of one mind with the beast. But then it says they hate the beast. What happens is you've got all these little local rulers, and they were pretty powerful, but they still had this, this is us, and yeah, we've been swallowed up by the Romans. But when the Roman Empire seemed weak, guess what they wanted to do? They wanted that we support you, but we see you're weak. We're going to just be our own country again. And so that helped break up, the power of the Roman Empire. Forgive me for running ahead, but anyway, And I heard the altar saying, "Yes, Lord God the Almighty, true and just are your judgments." I'm telling you something. We hadn't got to where we have a biblical perspective until we can celebrate God's judgments. We hadn't got there. The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was allowed to scorch the people with fire. They were scorched by the fierce heat, and they cursed the name of God who had power over these plagues. They did not repent and give him glory. We've already heard that refrain before. If calamity hits, we ought to be searching, and pagans, people throughout history, the people throughout history have always recognized that the religious pagans of the world have always recognized that if something bad was happening, then we need to find how to appease God, right? But the one God that they didn't want to appease and bow down to was the God of the Christians. So they're blaming, instead of repenting and turning to God, they're still appealing to the Caesar, who seemed very powerless, and all of their little Roman gods, who certainly were powerless because they were nothing. And again, in verse 10, the fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and his kingdoms was plunged into darkness. That, again, sounds like the book of Exodus. Darkness. People gnawed their tongues in anguish and cursed the God of heaven for their pain and sores. They did not repent of their deeds, and I take that to mean all their sins, but I take it to mean at this point, more than anything else, they still kept worshiping the Caesar in Rome. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. Its waters were dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon. Now this is where it gets strange. I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and now the mouth of the beast, now the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs, for they are demonic spirits performing signs, who will go abroad to the kings of the whole world to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. And then he quotes Jesus, "Behold, I'm coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, so that he may go about naked and be seen exposed." And they assembled at that place in Hebrew is called Armageddon. I want to read. And then, just out of curiosity, have any of y'all bought this book, Worthy is the Lamb or Breaking the Code? You did? Get it on your phone. Oh, you little modern. A hard copy's better. Which one did you buy? Do you remember, Breaking the Code or Worthy is the Lamb? Well, I love what he says here. All right, now he's going to go ahead and talk about Armageddon, and I'm going to come back to that. But what does he say about the frogs? Where is that? Oh, he says, look, Jesus' way was never the way of the sword. His sword is the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God. If one expects this to be literal, material battle, now he's talking about the Battle of Armageddon, that people are so freaked out, your friend, guarantee, worried about the Battle of Armageddon. And there's so many people in Christianity today, and I'm using that in the broadest sense of the term, that are scared to death of the coming Battle of Armageddon. Well, he says, look, Jesus doesn't fight that kind of battle, and if it is meant to be a literal material battle, he must expect the army to be headed by a committee of 3 frogs. If you're going to make part of it literal, make all of it literal, right? He says both figures are symbolic and neither is literal. Now, Armageddon, here's what he says, and some of you know this. He said this was a famous Hebrew battlefield. Here Gideon and his 300 defeated the Midianites. Here King Saul was defeated by the Philistines. Here I got Barack Obama on my mind when I say that, Barak and Deborah overthrew the host of the Canaanite king. Here I can't talk tonight. The king of Jehu's host of the Canaanite. Here this person died of Jehu's arrows, And here Pharaoh Necho overthrew Josiah. The place was burned into the minds of the Jewish people, and the mourning for Josiah in the valley of Megiddo was long afterward quoted as a typical example of national grief. Thus, Megiddo, from where we get Armageddon, and the word har there is at the beginning of Megiddo. That means mountain, and there's not a mountain there. It's just a hill. But anyway, that's the word har, means either mountain or hill. Thus, Megiddo fitly symbolized the worldwide distress of righteousness and evil engaged in deadly combat. This is a place that just says God's will is going to come out. That's what it says to the Jewish people. Even Josiah, the great King Josiah, I love the guy. He went out there and messed in a battle that he didn't really have to, and Pharaoh Necho told him, God doesn't want you out here. But he didn't, went ahead and fought, and he died. So Megiddo is a place of victory for God. So we're all worried about it. There's not a more anticlimactic battle in all of the history of the world than Armageddon in the book of Revelation. Because they all show up, God pours out fire, and it's all over with. Why in the world are you worried about that big thing? If it is in the future, if I'm wrong and it's in the future, why are you worried about it? It's over and like, phew, that's it. Yeah, going to watch Mike Tyson. You don't even get to sit down. You're trying to sit down and it bell rings. It's over. Wouldn't you hate to have paid a lot of money to see one of those fights? Anyway, verse 18, and there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a great earthquake such as there had never been since. And that's language too. That's language too of judgment and the downfall of a kingdom. Okay. I was trying to illustrate this to some seventh graders today. You know, it's not always, and then modern seventh grade, of course, all of them are modern, but most of them were raised on child psychology, not they don't know what the belt dance is and stuff like that. and I was trying to illustrate, sometimes we use language, our parents used to use language that they didn't mean literally. I'm going to tear your hide off. They didn't do that. Yeah. My mother one time grabbed the nearest thing handy, and it was a rose bush, and whipped me with it. And I had on shorts, so she did tear the hide off of me. But anyway, I didn't run from her anymore after that. But we use these things, and that may be a poor way of illustrating this, but it's still an illustration that God sometimes speaks of judgment in a way that is so dramatic that if it's literally fulfilled, it's mind-boggling, but he doesn't mean it to be taken literally. I'll illustrate this. Read Zephaniah chapter 1, starting in verse 2, and go down about 5 or 6 verses where God says, I'm going to wipe the earth clean. He's not talking about the end of the world. He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. It's basically a father saying, you're in big trouble. Does that make sense at all? Trey, do you ever threaten your children's life? Now, I know Carrie does, but Carrie won't speak up. At least once a day. I like honesty. Oh, yeah. There was a young little mother that, and I've told this, there was a little mother over at Alvin, and she was a hot-tempered little girl, little bitty thing, like Megan. But Megan's not hot-tempered. But she'd come in some Sunday mornings, and you could see the steam almost rising off of her head. And I'd say, how you doing? She'd say, fine. And you just wanted to laugh out loud. We've all been there, right? We've all been there where you're getting the kids ready. Have you ever get that way? All tore up trying to get the kids ready? Jazz like that? Well, I wasn't talking about Jana. But yeah, I could see that too. And you threaten them in ways. Anyway, I don't know. That's probably a poor illustration, but it is similar somewhat. Go read Zephaniah if you don't believe what I'm talking about. And it's not, and just keep in mind, it's not talking about the end of the world, but it sure does sound like it. It's the end of a lot of people's world, but it's not the end of the world. I think those seventh graders discovered there was a new book in the Bible they'd never heard of when I mentioned Zephaniah. Where'd they get to? I don't know. Verse 20 is where I'll start. Every island fled away, no mountain were to be found. Great hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell from heaven on people, and they cursed God for the plague of the hail because the plague was so severe. They just are not getting it, are they? Just are not getting it. And like I'll go back and say this again. If this is talking about something yet in the future, the outcome is still the same, and we still need to listen to this message. Blessed are those who die in the Lord. Don't believe it's out there in front of us. I think this has been fulfilled. I think it's probably been fulfilled more than once, and it may have a similar fulfilling again. But worship God, not anything else. That's the message. And God will deliver his people. He uses these plagues, just like in Exodus. He's going to deliver his people. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be given a nice house and a nice car and a life. You may die for your faith, but God's still going to deliver you. I mentioned this. You may have heard me do this in a funeral, but the NIV was the one translation that used to do this. It transliterated. Y'all know what I mean when I say transliterated? That you take one word out of one language and you just bring it over into the language you're translating into. You actually, like baptism, that's always the best illustration. Baptism, if it were translated, you would translate it immerse, because that's what it means. But the word in Greek, when Jesus and Moses, Jesus is on the Mount of Transfiguration. I don't remember which gospel account this was in the NIV, and I don't think the NIV does it anymore. I wish they'd left it alone. But Moses and Elijah are talking with Jesus about his forthcoming exodus. Now, most translations say death, but death is also an exodus for the one ready to go. It's the way out. So, yeah, God's going to deliver his people. And I guess we're about through. And yeah, I wish I felt as good as she does right now. And one thing, the difference between me and a baby is I don't fight sleep. I go with it. No point in fighting it. It needs to win out. Huh? Well, maybe. I don't know. You know, that's not the only difference. But that is a difference. Thank you, Trey. I called you Trey. Whatever your name is, Jake. Well, I'm going to stop because I really don't know how to. I hope I'm making some sense. I hope you understand. If I'm not, do like Megan and buy the book, put it on your phone, or get a hard copy. It's so helpful. And again, I go back to breaking the code. This has this has some things in it that I just love, and I'm going to get to it when I get to later on in the book. He says something that I just absolutely treasure. To me, it's worth the price of the book, and I'll read it to you eventually. I'll make a copy eventually too. All right, I hope you'll have a good day. Is Ronnie the guy that came to Wilson's surgery? I didn't know where he was in the order. Pretty big talker. Okay. Yeah, I do know him. I was trying to make sure. All right. I hope y'all have a good rest of the day and good week. Keep those people in your prayer. And I'm gonna tell you something. It would mean something to me if when Lonnie passes, whether you know him or not, if y'all would, find the time to say hi to Martha and let her know that you're thinking of her. Just